What's up, family? I don't know how many people I'm gonna get in here, fresh off the bat, but I got a lot of stories I want to talk about, and you know, a lot of stuff going on. And um, but first, when I get a few people in here, we'll get started. You know what I mean? Try to give it a little while. How everyone holiday was? Thanksgiving, family. Everybody had a good holiday. Hope everyone had a good holiday. And spend it with family and just relaxing. Me myself, I had a couple days off of work. So I'm taking this time just to reset and relax. Because oftentimes I work in a warehouse, so it's like a physically demanding job. So when I get time off, I just like to chill and relax. But I ate yesterday, went up to my sister's house and see my nephew and things like that. Took my cousin a plate, but other than that, I was just, relaxing, around the house. But yeah, I don't know how many people I'm gonna get in. I just tried something new today, so I decided to go live. I had today off too, with yesterday, so I had a 2 day vacation. So I was like, what the hell? Let me just see, if I get any of the family in, But I'm gonna get started. If I don't, the family could watch it on playback. It don't look like I'm gonna get too many people in here, but the show must go on. And first off, family, I want to give a moment of silence to, two of our elders that just recently passed away a few days ago. Our brother H. Rap Brown, you know what I mean, who was a member of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, and our sister Viola Ford Fletcher. So I just want to give a moment of silence for them. Yeah, family, we're going to get into it. Our sister Viola Fletcher, was one of the last remaining survivors of the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre, in which, white supremacists, along with the U.S. Government, went in there and dropped bombs over, Black Wall Street because Black people were shining and doing their thing and doing for self. They had businesses and institutions, set up, and they was getting ready to start doing, foreign trade. So the white supremacists, with that jealousy and envy in their heart, went in there, and dropped bombs over that community. And I want to play this particular video where our sister is asking, the government to, acknowledge the wrong that they've done, and they never, made good on compensation or restorative justice in the form of cash reparations, which our sister was standing on reparations business, you know what I mean? And a couple of them were, but a lot of them passed on, and our sister was the only one left. So people love to say that this, happened so long ago in time, and why don't you guys get over it? It wasn't too long ago. We just had someone pass away out of that era, so damn that. And we must keep on, with, advocating for reparations and, putting it out there in the public lexicon, the specific wrongs that were done to foundational Black Americans, you know what I mean? So the younger generations, can be taught this and know, the history of our people, you know what I mean? So Barack Obama, rather, punk moist behind, got out there and put out a tweet, family, over there on Twitter, and trying to acknowledge our sister, Viola Fletcher, and that's a bunch of nonsense because Obama had the power to get our sister reparations. Obama was in office, and he's a melanated person, and we foundational Black Americans put his punk moist sassy behind in office, and then he got the nerve to put out a tweet, and he said, I quote, as a survivor of the Tulsa race massacre, Viola Fletcher uh, bravely shared her story so that we never forget this painful part of history. Michelle and I are grateful to her lifelong work to advocate civil rights and send our love to her family. But Barack Obama is a punk moist tether, because he ain't of the lineage. So, of course he don't feel, affinity towards her, because if it was an FBA brother or sister sitting in, the White House, we would have made sure, our sister, along with, the rest of the surviving people from the Tulsa massacre, got they just due in the form of cash reparations, restorative justice. So, Barack Obama is just a punk moist tether, and they had, all of they had everything. Obama could have been, the closest thing to doing. They had everything when Obama was in office to do this, but Obama, just went along with the system of racism, white supremacy, ignored Black folks getting cut down in the street unjustly by race soldiers, and passed rainbow gang rights, and gave the police more protections and turned a blind eye to us in FBA society. So damn him, And this is why I don't vote, because both party are wings off the same bird, if you ask me. But Barack Obama would have been the closest thing, because he was melanated to, give our sister and the rest of those surviving Tulsa members restorative justice, because they all just passed away within a couple years. It wasn't that long ago, and our sister, like I said, just passed away a few days ago. And so I got the audio and the video of our sister, asking the country, the U.S. government, to recognize her and give restorative justice, which they turned a blind eye to. And we're going to walk through and talk about this thing how we normally do. But rest in power to our sister. And this is why we keep, advocating for lineage-based justice and reparations and speaking truth to power regarding our FBA lineage. I hate going on TikTok.
That's what I'm asking my
Very
country to acknowledge what happened in Tulsa in 1921.
The oldest living survivor of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre has died at 111 years old, Viola Ford Fletcher. Now, her grandson told me that when she passed, she had a beautiful smile on her face and that she loved life and people. The Tulsa Race Massacre was when a white mob destroyed Tulsa's Greenwood neighborhood, a thriving black-owned business district at the time. Thousands of black residents were arrested, robbed, beaten, and killed. I actually sat with Fletcher a few times over the years as she and other living survivors robbed,
But yeah, they said white supremacist mob came through there along with the U.S. government. We ain't letting them, scapegoat and get off the hook. They came through there and dropped, bombed out of a plane on Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we can never forget that. You know what I mean? Because they seen black folks thriving and doing their thing, setting up an economic, base to where though we didn't have to go patronize stores in the dominant white society. We was doing business with our own community, which means we was practicing group economics, and the money was staying in our community. And the white supremacists didn't like this, so they had to come in there. Whenever black people make positive strides, particularly foundational black Americans, the white supremacists come through and sabotage. It ain't that we don't build, we build, but we as foundational black Americans are the only group that day in and day out are specifically targeted by these white supremacists, and that's nonsense.
And killed. I actually sat with Fletcher a few times over the years as she and other living survivors pursued a lawsuit against the city of Tulsa and other related departments, alleging they were complicit in the 1921 massacre and that its effects were still being felt today.
Well, I think we should get justice to be fairer. I think the court should feel the same way.
In June,
I know this sister should have been given justice. Rather, I don't know. I know she should have been. Ain't no thinking about it. Specific harms was done. They came through it there and harmed tons of black folks. Businesses was burnt to the ground. Kids harmed, a bunch of nonsense. And our sister was traumatized by this. She even said it. I don't know if it's gonna say it in this particular video, but she said she was haunted by nightmares. In her life. That she just couldn't get over of seeing. The day when the white supremacists came through there, and burned the town down and, did whatever the hell they wanted to do, working in collaboration with the U.S. government, because the government, had its hand involved in this too, so we can never, let that slide, and we got to keep, putting out the real for real regarding our FBA lineage.
Of 2024, the Oklahoma Supreme Court dismissed that lawsuit, which argued the remaining survivors should be compensated by the city for damages. This is history, though, that is quickly disappearing, but now lives on in history, though, that is...
See, they had a lawsuit going on in 2024. I touched on it right here on my channel, but they shot it down. They wasn't willing to, give restorative justice in the form of cash reparations, for this atrocity that was committed against our people. This is why, I always advocate for the lineage and, stand on truth to power regarding our FBA lineage, because the history of what's been done to my people is going to live on through me, and I don't give a damn who likes it or not. This is why I speak so much truth to power and stand on so much lineage business, because they're not just going to erase, and whitewash our FBA history. You know what I mean? But let's continue.
Quickly disappearing, but now lives on in her memory. Here's some of what she told me over the years about what she remembers from that day in 1921.
People getting killed, and houses, property, schools, churches, and stores getting destroyed with fire. getting destroyed.
See, our sister was plagued by nightmares the entirety of her life from this nonsense that took place, so it traumatized her, so she was damn sure old, and they were all complicit in, the Democrats and the Republicans complicit in, seeing to it that our sister and the rest of those surviving members from Black Wall Street, Tulsa, Oklahoma never got their just due. They were all complicit in that, the right and the left.
With fire, and then someone in the neighborhood saying to leave the neighborhood, if not, we're going to kill all of the black people. It just stays with me, it's just the fear that I have lived in Tulsa since, but I don't sleep all night living there. I'm asking my country to.
So it's important that we keep on, beating the drum for reparations, lineage based, for our sister who lost, to our sister who lost her life, a couple days ago, Sister Viola Fletcher. So it's important we carry that, beating the drum for reparations just for her to make sure, that we get reparations, because us getting our reparations, that would, make her happy, looking down from up above. So that, that's going to be something that we ain't going to let our foot up off the gas pedal and, advocating for lineage-based reparations, because we owe it to our ancestor, Sister Viola Fletcher. They didn't give her just due, along with none of the remaining survivors that just died, within a couple of years. It wasn't that long ago, so they didn't get their just due. So we're going to, make sure that the lineage gets what's rightfully owed to us for the building of, this country of America, and all of, the forced labor that our ancestors and, all of the horrific things that they went through and never got compensated. So we're going to make sure that, that lives on through us. But moving right along. RIP to our sister, Viola Fletcher, and I want to send my condolences out to her friends and family. I got another banger over here on TikTok, family, and if y'all over there on TikTok, make sure you like and follow the family Tether Radio, because I did a little bit of talking to the family over there. They put out music, you know what I mean? They put out a lot of songs, coming at these tethers, and the songs are funny, but in all actuality, the songs got a lot of truth to power in it. And when I was corresponding back and forth with our brother who is the owner of this Tether Radio over there on TikTok, he told me like I got full support in sharing the videos and things like that, bringing light and awareness to the Tether Radio. And Tether Radio, he said that he owns the company and he employs it's all foundational Black Americans working for him. So we need to get behind Tether Radio. And I want to share this banger they got Kamala Harris's tether behind cooking up greens in the bathroom when she was making that run for president. She was cosplaying, FBA, talking about she made collard greens and she listens to Tupac, this, that, and the other. This woman is East Indian. She has nothing to do with FBA lineage. And, I just thought this song was funny. It had me cracking up. So I just want to share, Tether Radio. And if y'all over there on TikTok, make sure you like and follow the family Tether Radio. They put out a lot of, classic bangers. Fair use.
You never had collard greens clean in the tub. Boy, you're in for a real treat. I need my collard greens clean, fresh out of the tub, oh baby.
You see that picture in the backdrop where Joe Biden's white supremacist behind said you ain't black if you don't vote for him when he got up there, at the Breakfast Club. A bunch of nonsense.
It's clean, fresh out of the tub, oh baby. I said I need them collard greens clean, fresh out.
Shout out to the family for the $5 donation. CH Chingy3. I think that's how you pronounce it. Hopefully I ain't chopping it. But peace and shout out to Chingy3 for the $5 donation.
The table, baby, yeah. My collard greens clean. Oh yeah. My collard greens clean. Yeah. I'ma tether and I clean. Collard greens in the tub. I'm Jamaican and Hindu, and I'm also married to Doug. I appreciate white men, they're my ultimate love. When
You hear that? I got to rewind that.
they're Jamaican and Hindu, and I'm also married to Doug. I appreciate white men, they're my ultimate love. When it comes to
See, the songs are funny, but it's a lot of truth to power in there. This woman has nothing to do with FBA society. You know, she's Indian and Jamaican, you know, at best. She ain't got nothing to do with FBA society. Talking about we cook collard greens. She cooks her collard greens in the tub. You know, a bunch of nonsense. You know, these folks will do whatever, you know, to try to get in office off of foundational black Americans, use our pain and struggle to benefit all these damn, you know, immigrant groups, you know, this, that, and the other, minority coalitions, you know, rainbow gang rights, but turn a blind eye to FBA society. Damn that, you know, them days is over. This is why I love the delineation movement, because it stopped a lot of this nonsense. Folks ain't able to sit up and cosplay, you know, and if they want in office, they want FBA to vote for them, they got to be willing to do something specifically for our lineage, you know, or I say we vote for the couch.
men, they're my ultimate love. When it comes to black men, I be locking them up. When it comes
Remember, she was locking up, you know, parents and things like that, you know, who might have been going through like some health problems that was, you know, for truancy and things like that, you know, locking up all of them black men out there in California and things like that. There was a sister that spoke out and said she locked her up, you know, for truancy or something. And come to find out, the sister, she has like some kind of, you know, health issue. She was in the hospital and things like that. You know, Kamala Harris is for sure as hell not for our people. I say the right or the left ain't for our people, and we, you know, continue to sit it out on the couch until things are specifically done for our group.
when it comes to collard greens, I'll be cutting them up while dog is taking a dump. I'm fantasizing about Trump. I need my collard greens clean, fresh out of the tub, oh baby. Oh yeah. I said I need them collard greens clean, fresh out of the tub, oh baby. Yeah. My collard greens clean. Oh yeah. My collard greens clean.
Yeah, family. Make sure y'all follow, if you're on TikTok, follow Tether Radio. They got an all foundational Black American team that makes this music, and you know they standing on lineage business. You know, so I'm gonna keep, you know, whenever they put out some new joints, they said I got full permission, you know, to share the videos and things like that and to talk about them. So I'll be bringing them to the family as they put them out. And I want to say, you know, shout out to Chingy3, you know, once again for the donation. And they say, divine energy, salute to you too, family. And they say, keep flaming the tethers, FBA to the world. Yup. I'm going to keep on doing that, family. I'll make sure I do that and stand on lineage business. You know what I mean? The cosplaying is over at this point, you know. We've let that go on for far too long, you know, and now we checking the nonsense and putting the end to it, you know, and that's why everybody's frustrated and upset, you know, because we as foundational Black Americans were supposed to be the group that everyone was supposed to exploit, you know what I mean, and come up off of, and then, you know, do not a damn thing in return. The energy wasn't reciprocated. We be out there advocating for people, this, that, and the other, standing on business for them, and never once in a million damn years would the people return the favor, you know what I mean, but moving right along. Let me get a swig of this water, family. And see the next thing I want to touch on. The next thing I want to go to, family, is I'm going to get off of this app and I'm going to go over there to YouTube. Hopefully I don't mess nothing up. I hate jumping from platform to platform. Come on. We got to talk about our brother H. Rap Brown. Turn this down so I don't get copyrighted. Just a second, family. My computer is lagging a little bit. What the hell is this? Pop up. Hold on, family. I don't know what this shit's doing. It's like froze or something. Let me get out of here and go back in. There we go. Where's it at? Where's it at? Where's it at? Where we at? I think, yep, this is it. Okay, family, we're going to be talking about our brother H. Rap Brown, who was standing on truth to power, and really, being about the interests, of standing on, making sure that, our FBA lineage, got freedom, justice, and equality. You know what I mean? And he was really about, the people, FBAs in particular. You know what I mean? And our brother, was falsely in prison. And after me doing my little homework and due diligence, I'm glad I came up on this because I didn't even know this. Our brother was falsely in prison. They said that he shot an officer, this, that, and the other. And come to find out, the dude that actually did the slaying of this officer, the brothers, took, accountability for that, said he done it. But the thing is, the FBI, and the government had that COINTEL thing going on with our brother H. Rap Brown. They had thousands of documents to where though they was watching our brother, and just trying to sabotage him. Our brother was down there in Atlanta, building for the community and, really advocating, really getting out there and, really being proactive in the community, and building and things like that. Here, the government was working to sabotage our brother through that COINTEL thing. You know what I mean? And he was locked up unjustly for the slaying of that officer. He never did it. And this video is going to put some light and awareness on that. And our brother was really, standing on business regarding our people. And that's just a bunch of nonsense with, they typically always do this, to our strong warriors, that's really trying to bring about change in the community and be about the community. The government works to sabotage and put a bunch of, bogus charges on them and bring them down, So our brother was falsely in prison, and he should have been free. He should have never, spent out the living years of his life behind bars. And that's nonsense. And we're going to walk through and talk about it because he was really, an advocate, for building the community, strong Black communities and things like that. So, I just want to pay a little bit of homage and respect to our brother by, talking about him because I didn't even know, all the logistics to his situation. I just knew he was of the Black Panther Party and he was in prison, they say, for that officer, but he never, done that to that officer. That was unjustly thrown on him. They put those bogus trumped up charges on him as to bring him down because he was out there really enacting change in the community and really being about community. But let's walk through and talk about it, family. Fair use.
The fifth chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and Minister of Justice for the Black Panther Party, is one of the most powerful Black revolutionaries and human rights activists of the Civil Rights Movement.
See, unlike America would have us believe.
Shout out to the family, to Wanda.
The greatest problem confronting this country today is not pollution and bad breath. It's Black people. It's Black people.
At the age of 21, Brown is a part of a delegation to demand action for the civil rights of African Americans.
I need more moderators too. I didn't mean to, interrupt the video. I'm gonna let it play. But shout out to Tawanda. Tawanda, I made you I gave you a wrench so you'll be able to moderate the chat because all the time I ain't able to look over at the chat and it takes my focus off of, my talking points that I want to get in. So Tawanda, I gave you I know you stand on a lot of lineage business too. I gave you a wrench, so you'll be able to moderate the chat and clean people up if they come in here, trying to talk about some nonsense, and divert the attention. You know what I mean?
Met with President Lyndon B. Johnson. Brown laid the foundations for black political power in the South by fighting against Jim Crow segregation and organizing black voters. The FBI's COINTELPRO program, aimed at disrupting black political movements and neutralizing black messiahs such as Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, targeted Brown in an effort.
Anybody that comes up in the black community, FBAs in particular, when we stand on business and speak truth to power, they got to sabotage us, and send people amongst us that look like us, and a lot of the times they'll use tethers, to infiltrate and, come at our lineage and bring us down, and just do a bunch of nonsense, you know what I mean? Because their goal and duty is to prevent the rise of the black messiah, someone that can galvanize black people. Their greatest fear is FBAs, having unity. That's why what we doing with delineation, getting on code based off of lineage is gaining so much headway in a short amount of time. You know what I mean? Because they fear, black unity in all actuality, particularly foundational black Americans, because we the only people that got the power, the wherewithal, and the guts to bring the system of racism, white supremacy down. And they know this themselves, the white supremacists.
To diminish its growing influence across the nation. In 1967, Brown was falsely charged with inciting riots following a rally speech in Cambridge, Maryland. As a result of Brown's threat to the status quo, Congress passed the H. Rap Brown Law, which made it illegal to cross state lines in order to incite.
Did you hear what they said? They passed the H. Rap Brown Law. It shows you how impactful this brother really was. They passed the law. See, we FBAs do things and we get laws changed, and they got to, frame things around us, to bring us down. They passed the law and, in this brother's name, from the kind of business he was standing on.
Growing influence across the nation. In 1967, Brown was falsely charged with inciting riots following a rally speech in Cambridge, Maryland. As a result of Brown's threat to the status quo, Congress passed the H. Rap Brown Law.
That brother wasn't inciting no riots. When you a foundational black American and you speak truth to power, the establishment don't like that. They'll work to bring you down.
Which made it illegal to cross state lines in order to incite a riot. While serving time in prison, Brown converted to Islam and changed his name to Jamil Abdullah Al-Amin. Upon release from prison, Jamil Al-Amin made the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca and traveled the world to study Islam in West Africa, India, Pakistan, and the West Indies.
By the token of time and through the ages, verily man is a loser, except those who are given to righteousness and who counsel each other to truth and who counsel each other to patience.
He returned to Atlanta, Georgia as Imam Jamil Al-Amin to establish a community mosque in the West End neighborhood of Atlanta, notorious for its gang violence and drugs.
See, this brother returned to the community to put things in the black community to build and, be community minded. And this is what they don't want, you being able to provide food, clothing, and shelter, and do for self in the community and really have the power, the speaking power to galvanize your people. They'll work to bring that down, And that's historically, what they done to our people who try to do this, and frame them. Our brother was framed, you know what I mean? He never did nothing to no damn officer. And you'll see the brother that really did it to the officer got on the stand and say, yeah, I did it, but they wasn't trying to hear that because they just wanted to scapegoat it on our brother because he was so powerful with the speech and being able to galvanize and move the people.
Drugs. Imam Jamil, concerned about the social revolution and spiritual upliftment of his community, led a neighborhood cleanup of drugs and prostitution through anti-drug and violence campaigns.
Cleaning up the community from drugs and prostitution. You hear that, family? This brother stood on business, you know what I mean? He wasn't, he wasn't guilty of, harming no police officer. This brother was standing on business and galvanizing people and getting drugs out of the community, and that's what they don't want, They rather things, stay the way they are in the black community because it benefits them, because they the ones that cause the things we see, the hurdles and things that are set up in the black community, such as drugs, this, that, and the other, They put them there as vices, to stop our progress, you know what I mean? But that's a different story. But yeah, this brother was standing on truth to power, and this brother wasn't guilty of, what he was in prison for.
And established several social programs while simultaneously unifying the diverse Muslim community in America nationally. The FBI continued to surveil Imam Jamil until this day, and looked for any way to pin a crime upon him. Later documents
See, they were doing surveillance on him up until that day, just trying to pin a crime on him.
revealed the FBI had a 44,000-page file on him and his community.
You got a 44,000-page file on somebody, you know they trying to sabotage you and bring you down.
In May 1999, Imam Jamil was illegally pulled over and charged with impersonation of a police officer for possessing a badge gifted to him by the mayor of Whitehall, Alabama. While out to arrest
And even that was bogus charge they tried to put on him, impersonating a police officer when the mayor gave him a badge. You know, you can't make this kind of thing up. You know, we see it all too often, though, when it regards our black revolutionaries that, you know, are standing on business, you know, and really being about black people trying to bring about change. They got to work to bring him down, you know, and that's nonsense.
Imam Jamil, two officers mistakenly shoot at another African-American male, Otis Jackson. As a result, one officer is killed and the other is wounded on the scene. Despite Jackson confessing to the crime publicly on video and matching the description of the shooter from eyewitness.
See, the dude Otis Jackson, he confessed to it, and they still, you know, put this unaliving of the police officer on our brother H. Rap Brown, aka Jamil.
The confession has never been mentioned in a single trial of Al-Amin's, and factual evidence was left outside of the trial due to judicial misconduct.
That you had committed a murder and were involved in the shooting of a cop in March of 2000 in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes.
You weren't arrested for it, were you?
Tamir, you said you can't hear me when I can't hear you at times when you're reviewing the clips. Yeah, I got to get my microphone in. Sorry about that, family. This is gonna have to work for now. I got my nephew coming over to help me. He's more tech savvy. He's younger, you know, so that's these younger kids generation. So my nephew gonna be coming over here in like a week or two to help me with, you know, the microphone that I got, because I don't know, you know, the first thing about setting it up. So this is gonna have to do for now. But let's continue.
No, sir, I was not.
In fact, another person was tried and convicted.
Jamil Al-Amin, yes, sir.
Thus, Imam
Did you
Jamil
hear
was
that?
sentenced
That brother confessed to
arrested for it, were you? That you had committed a murder and were involved in the shooting of a cop in March of 2000 in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes.
You weren't arrested for it, were you?
No, sir, I was not.
In fact, another person was tried and convicted.
Jamil Al-Amin, yes, sir.
Thus, Imam Jamil is sentenced to life in prison in
That's nonsense. But salute to our brother H. Rap Brown, and may he rest in power. You know what I mean? And my condolences goes out to his friends and family. But that brother was never, you know, guilty of the alleged crimes he was sitting in prison for. You know, they was working to bring our brother down because he was standing on truth to power and really able to galvanize the black community. And they don't want that. You know what I mean? So yeah, moving right along. I want to say, you know, once again, RIP to our brother H. Rap Brown and our sister Viola Ford Fletcher. Moving right along. Let's see what else I want to touch on. This is another crazy one, family. Anybody heard the latest controversy with the Campbell's food? You know what I mean? It was caught on video, big executive, you know, talking about the food was 3D, you know, the chicken was 3D processed. This is food for poor people, this, that, and the other. And this is why, you know, we got to start making healthier choices, food choices, family. You know, sometimes it don't even cost a lot of money. You know, just look for things that's cost effective, but still provide nutrients. Stay away from them heavy processed foods, because I've been making a switch in my life to try to, you know, stop eating so much processed foods, like from a can, like potato chips and these like fried foods, like, you know, them ultra processed foods. They've been linked to cancers and a whole host of other, you know, health conditions. But yeah, Campbell's food executive was caught, you know, saying that the soup is designed for poor people, you know, who would eat that filth, is printed on a 3D printer, whole bunch of nonsense, you know what I mean? I wouldn't be surprised if Campbell's soup, you know, go out of business, you know, but as they should, you know, they shouldn't, you know, be putting this kind of crap in the food anyway, you know, and on the other hand, you know, they make food that's, you know, nutrient rich so high sometimes. So it's like, if people don't got the money, what the hell are they going to do? Starve, you know? So it's just a whole bunch of nonsense, you know, with food in general. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can get a pack of donuts for, you know, like $2, but you go to get some like walnuts or peanuts, they put the price through the roof because they know they carry nutrients, you know? So I think it all, I don't want to get too deep on it, but it all goes back to that population control, you know what I mean? And them trying to, you know, depopulate the planet and things like that. You know what I mean? By making the food, heavily processed. They know that these stuff cause a whole host of, health benefits. Peace to the family, the Hulu gang. And peace to Sister Black Love. I see you, sister. But let's get into this Campbell soup nonsense.
There's a lot of work that goes.
And they stopped Brother Reza Islam channel for a while for talking truth to power. He recently just got back on YouTube. They banned his channel, because he speaks a lot of truth to power, against the medical field and, the food industry and things like that. You know what I mean? And the Nation of Islam, period. They've been telling us for years, through our brother Elijah Muhammad, eat to live. You know what I mean? And telling the dangers of, eating this heavily processed food. It's a bunch of nonsense that goes along with it. And here's, we have it. The Campbell Soup Company was putting a bunch of, filth into their soups. Fair use.
We are following a messy situation for the Campbell Soup Company today after a former employee filed a lawsuit against the company and then released audio his lawyers say he recorded during a meeting with executives. Let's go to CBS News correspondent Chanel Call, who's live in our newsroom. Chanel, what do we know about this lawsuit?
So, Liz, this lawsuit, we understand, was launched by a person by the name of Robert Garza. Now, Garza was hired as a cybersecurity analyst for Campbell's back in September of 2024. And, Liz, 2 months after he was hired, he says he had a meeting with an executive named Martin Bally to discuss his salary. Now, during that meeting, he is now alleging that Bally made several disparaging comments about Indian workers and also said that Campbell's is, quote, highly processed food for poor people. Now, CBS...
See that nonsense he said? It's highly processed food for poor people. And Sister Black Love, I just added you as a moderator, because I need some moderators to hear, because like sometimes I get trolls in the chat and I ain't always, able to stop and, block them from the channel and things like that. So people I see in here, more heavily, I'm going to start giving a wrench to, if I know that you, standing on business, I'm going to start giving out wrenches to the family. But yeah, you hear that nonsense? He said it's heavily processed food for poor people. That's a bunch of nonsense.
News did get a copy of that recorded phone call. Garza's attorney is saying that this was secretly recorded. So take a listen to part of that conversation.
I don't buy products barely anymore. It's unhealthy. Now that I know what the in it. Even in a can of soup, I look at it, we can eat bioengineered meat. I don't want to eat a
And when y'all see that, family, bioengineered meat, stay away from that. It means it was made in a lab, and it's a whole host of, health benefits that go along with that, along with the high fructose corn syrup. You know what I mean? They've been linked to several things that they won't tell you, but when you, research it, you'll see, in all actuality, all the harmful, ingredients in these things. But let's continue.
piece of chicken that came from a 3D printer, do you?
So Liz, Garza says that...
So they was making this, genetically modified chicken in the soup, allegedly through a 3D printer, and I could believe that, you know what I mean?
He actually told his manager about that phone call a couple of months later in January of 2025. And then he said that he wasn't encouraged to take that information to HR. Now, just 3 weeks after that conversation, Garza was told that he was abruptly terminated from employment. So Campbell's released a statement on this. I'll read you part of what they say. They say, "We are proud of the food we make, the people who make it, and the high quality ingredients we use. The comments heard on the recording about our food are not only inaccurate, they are patently absurd. We use 100% real chicken in our soups."
Of course, they gonna say it and get, and speak in opposition to, what that high top executive said, because that stops their cash flow. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of things that ain't, supposed to be for human consumption that's in a lot of these foods, family, in all actuality.
The chicken meat comes from long-trusted USDA-approved U.S. suppliers and meets our high-quality standards. All of our soups are made with no antibiotics ever chicken meat, and any claims to the contrary, they say, are completely false. The company is also saying, Liz, that Bally is on temporary leave while the company now conducts its own investigation. But this isn't the only legal trouble that Campbell's is now facing. I want to show you what's on my screen here. This is a social media post from Florida's Attorney General saying this: Florida law bans lab-grown meat. Our Consumer Protection Division is launching an investigation.
So Campbell Soup in the hot water, from two places. Now Florida's coming after him for, having genetically modified meats and things like that.
And will demand answers from Campbell's. So the state is now saying it's going to be looking into this company. So it's not just this one lawsuit. The state also now launching its own investigation.
As they should, because they ain't got no business, serving this kind of nonsense to people. You know what I mean? They know the health complications that this nonsense can, do to people, and it's all just to make, a larger amount of money. You see bread, family, bread ain't supposed to have 50 gazillion ingredients in it. Bread should only contain like 1 or 2 ingredients. Why they put all them added extra ingredients in there, to stretch it out, make more money, but, at the expense of people, and damn that. But moving right along. What else did I want to touch on? Yeah, family, we got a white supremacist race soldier who was caught, making a social media post, wearing a ski mask, one of them full hooded ski masks that cover your whole face. And he talking about to catch a YN, you got to become a YN. And that's a bunch of nonsense because, he's trying to suggest, he got a racist white supremacist mind from the get-go because he's making, suggesting that, all black people are thugs, criminals, and going to rob people, sell drugs, this, that, and the other. And that's a bunch of nonsense, you know what I mean? And yeah, he's been fired. He's since been fired, but they should, fire him, and he shouldn't have the ability to be a police officer ever again, because a lot of times they'll fire these guys and they'll go to another state and just become a police officer in another state when they should be fired, from ever being in law enforcement again. They should, make the penalty, tougher on these race soldiers. And this guy should be investigated, for possibly putting bogus crimes on black people, or, doing some nonsense, regarding, treating black people unjustly, maybe harming black people, planting drugs, this, that, and the other. Because if he got this kind of mindset to say, to catch a YN, you got to become a YN, that lets you know that this guy got a white supremacist mindset, and ain't nothing that he won't do, regarding black society. But let's get into it, family. Fair use. But family, this is why I like that new challenge they got going on. Some black folks don't like it. That 3/4 zips challenge where they wearing, like the sweatshirts with a little zipper on it, the young brothers, cleaning up their appearance, because some black folks that don't like it because they say that suggests, that we're being targeted just off the way we look, when we know that we're being targeted based off of race. While we know we are being targeted based off of race, because regardless of what you wear, the white supremacist race soldiers, they gonna still, try to do nonsense to black folks because, it's race based, but I'm saying, why I like it is the 3/4 zips challenge that the young brothers is doing, because let's face it, let's be real, you know what I mean? You will be judged, unfortunately, based off of how you look, and people will judge a book by its cover, so when you dressed, superbly, this is why the Nation of Islam dresses superbly too, wearing them bow ties and conducting themselves in a certain type of way, because you demand respect. Even people that don't want to respect, sometimes they're forced to, respect you just based on the way you look. And, this is another aspect too. The way you dress, it will, doors will be able to open to you. You go into a place with your pants hanging down, people ain't going to respect you as a man, you know what I mean? And doors is going to shut. It ain't right, but doors is going to, because you could be a hell of a worker, and you going in there for a job, and the door is going to shut in your face, but you go in there, with a suit on, a sweater on, some nice slacks, some nice dress shoes, you're going to command respect and get the job based off of that. You might not know anything, but people, unfortunately, in this world, they judge a book by its cover. And, when I was growing up, it reminds me of growing up with my mom, and my two sisters. My mom always, made sure that we was fly as kids, and that's just embedded in FBA society. You know, when you go to school on the first day, you fly on the first day, you know, dressed impeccably, you know, but my mom made sure we stayed, you know, fly all year round, you know, but my mom took, you know, a little bit of a greater emphasis on me because she knew I was a black man and the hurdles and things I would have to jump through. So she made sure I was dressed a little bit more impeccably, you know what I mean? So while it ain't right, you know, you will be judged based off of, you know, how you're dressing. Even though we're in a system of racism, white supremacy, two things can exist at the same time. So we're going to walk through and talk about this, family. Fair use. Let me rewind it. Fair use.
A Spartanburg County deputy is off the job tonight after the sheriff says he made a racially insensitive post on social media.
Sheriff Bill Ryan says the deputy was on the job for 5 years before today's firing.
And this happened down there in South Carolina too, family. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Reports from Spartanburg County.
Spartanburg County Sheriff Bill Ryan says a uniformed patrol deputy from the Reedville area has been fired after he posted a racial slur on social media. He says this decision was not taken lightly, but had to be made instantly.
That kind of stuff will absolutely not be tolerated under any circumstances at this agency under my leadership.
And they won't mention the racial slur in this particular video, but the racial slur he said was to catch a YN, you got to become a YN. And that's a white supremacist mindset and ideology because, you know, that's a stereotype, you know, a false narrative that the white supremacists put out there that all young black men are thugs, criminals out here robbing, slanging drugs, this, that, and the other. You know, they use that as a way to demonize all black society. You know what I mean? When every society got people that, you know, aren't doing good, you know, amongst the people, you know, so they use that to try to go into black society and paint us all with the same paintbrush. And damn that narrative, this guy needs to be, you know, maybe investigated to see if he, you know, put bogus charges or did unjust things to black folks.
Leadership.
You're looking at the social media post that Spartanburg County Sheriff says led to a deputy losing his job. We have blurred out the portion where a racial slur was written.
A lot of people think,
and along with him losing that job, he shouldn't be able to practice law enforcement in any other state, I think.
That or on social media, that it gives them a platform to be able to say anything that they want to say. Unfortunately, that is not true.
The sheriff says he first saw the post Friday morning, but could not say on what social media platform it was published.
Immediately, I go back to looking at it and trying to figure out, is he trying to insinuate that he is of a different color or ethnicity? But when you look at it as a whole, it's every aspect of it. I was really...
Yeah, he was trying to put out the messaging that all young black men are thugs, robbers, criminals, and drug dealers. And that's a bunch of nonsense. That's a white supremacist false narrative of a stereotype that they try to paint on all young black men. And that's nonsense.
Kind of taken back by it when I saw it.
The sheriff says the post was published Thursday night and the deputy was fired hours later for violating the agency's social media policy and rules of conduct. Ryan says he is not naming the deputy at this time.
The reason for that is I want to be respectful to them, to give them time. This is very fresh. This has just happened.
And it shows you how the system of racism, white supremacy works, because why not just put his damn name out there? He said he wanted to be respectful to a racist white supremacist that was trying to label, you know, black people as criminals. Why show him that amount of respect? Why not put his name out there? You know, they should put his name out there, if you ask me, expose him.
I want to make sure that I'm respectful enough to them to give them time to notify family and other people prior to that.
The sheriff touting transparency and accountability.
We're going to be transparent with everything that we are doing here. That's something that has not been provided over the last few years. Unfortunately, I have a tremendous amount of responsibility on my shoulders to reestablish that trust within the people of this county, and I'm committed to doing that.
The sheriff says that the Criminal Justice Academy will likely pull this deputy's law enforcement certification, but he says there is an appeals process that...
Okay, so they saying that they might pull his law enforcement, status to where, though, he probably won't be able to practice law enforcement again, you know, and move to any other agency. And that's good, because these people with this kind of mindset could hurt, harm, and injure black folks, you know, plant drugs on them, you know, and make it look like set them up on bogus, trumped up charges, just a whole bunch of nonsense.
That deputy can go through. Reporting in Spartanburg County, Ray Arena, WYFF News 4.
Yeah, but he deserved to be fired. You know, he ain't got no business being, no damn police officer because he ain't trying to protect and serve not a damn thing. The only thing he's serving and protecting is the system of racism, white supremacy, family. But moving right along. Yeah, family. I don't know. I watched some of 50 Cent shows, but how y'all feel about 50 Cent? I think 50 Cent is a buck dancing coon, that gets out here and does the dirty work of the racist white supremacists. You know what I mean? Because he's putting out a new documentary series, trying to expose Diddy, and that's coonish if you ask me, because 50 Cent is constantly on the internet, trolling. Other black folks, and never once has he ever called out any of these YT people. Jimmy Iovine was said to have done a whole bunch of nonsense, and I don't see him calling out that record exec Jimmy Iovine. So 50 Cent, in my book and opinion, ain't nothing more than a performative coon who gets out here to do the dirty work of white supremacy. You know what I mean? Because he trying to go at Diddy and attack Diddy, when Diddy wasn't guilty of not a damn thing but being a black man in the system of racism, white supremacy. He shouldn't have, whooped down on Cassie, but he was wrong, and he gave her money for that, and they still, trying to hang that over his head and use that, as an angle to demonize him, this, that, and the other. And he wasn't guilty of not a damn thing, because if they could have nailed him to the cross and gave him life in prison, you could have bet your last damn dollar that they would have did that to Diddy. You know what I mean? That was about breaking Diddy financially, because they love, to break, black people, but black men in particular who are prominent and successful. So damn that. I don't like 50. I like some of his shows to a certain degree, but it got a lot of, stereotypical nonsense in it. He could have a little bit more, higher consciousness stuff in there, but I like some of his shows, and I used to like some of his music, but now 50 just turned into a tool of white supremacy, if you ask me, to get out here and troll black people and do a whole bunch of nonsense. Let me find this video though. Just a moment, family. Here we go. Fair use, fair use.
You can't continue to keep hurting. You can't continue to keep hurting people and nothing ever happens.
Sean Combs' The Reckoning, only 17 seconds long. This is the provocative tease for Curtis.
I think that's what the documentary series is called that he's putting out, so-called exposing Diddy, The Reckoning. You know what I mean? That's a bunch of nonsense, because the white supremacists, got to get a buck dancing coon to go against another black person. That's a old strategy, and they using 50 Cent now as their voice piece, to troll other black people, and he lets, YT people get away scot-free. You'll never see him in a million years call out nobody white because he's afraid.
Jackson's 4-part Netflix documentary about the disgraced and convicted music mogul.
I don't like the narrative that they keep trying to call Diddy disgrace. You know what I mean? Diddy get back out and he build himself up how I hope he does. He should not fool with none of these folks who ain't, throw him a lifeline and try to aid him, all of the celebrities that he used to know, he shouldn't deal with none of them, he should say the hell with them all, because nobody came to his aid.
Shot callers, bro.
I don't want to play that, family. I'm gonna skip that because I could get copyrighted. Hold on. Sorry about that. Let's see if it takes
across 12 different networks.
One of them, the new documentary. 50 announced it last year, tweeting, "I've been telling y'all about this weird bleep. You didn't believe me, but I bet you believe me now."
Go show it.
At the 2012 BET Awards, and the
Sorry, family, I had to drag it a little close because they got their music in there, and I don't want to get copyrighted or get the live stream, flag.
Bad blood continued.
I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm truly sorry.
After Diddy apologized when CNN released the video of Diddy's hotel attack on Cassie, Curtis weighed in, "This is not going to work." When Combs was arrested
See, 50's just a performative coon and a troll, who constantly goes at black folks, but to turn a blind eye to, YT people because he afraid, to go at the power structure. Yeah, Tawanda, 50 is a troll. That's one thing for sure, two things for certain.
Last year, 50 tweeted, "Now it's not Diddy do it, it's Diddy done," and posted a bottle of Diddy oil. After Diddy's sentencing, 50 wrote, "To whoever was booking Diddy for speaking engagements, I heard he won't be able to make it."
Tell me how to Instagram shade somebody. I need to know. What's the tact?
And Diddy, I mean, not Diddy, but 50's mindset, 50 was probably happy that, Diddy didn't get all the years. He was, he was probably, not happy, but he was probably mad and upset that, Diddy didn't get all the years they was, previously, trying to give him. He probably was, in there punching the air, like, on Boys in the Hood, in there punching air, you know what I mean? Because this is, he ain't nothing but a coon, if you ask me. And, his true colors have really, shine through in the last couple years, constantly trolling black people, I don't like that about 50. Damn, what you doing?
For the Diddy trial, Curtis gave us his social media strategy to a perfect troll.
Usually whatever they kind of give you a lead. Like
Yeah.
Whatever they're upset about or whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
Now Philly, now 50, I said Philly, but now 50 is, telling how to be a good troll and a good, tool for the system of racism, white supremacy. He's telling how to troll, but in all actuality, he only trolls black folks,
You look at them and you kind of look for the flaws in the person.
Today, a source tells Extra that 50's doc covers Diddy's life from childhood to present and is, quote, very balanced, not a hit piece. It premieres.
I think it's a hit piece where, he just, going full throttle, trying to target and, tear down Diddy's character, and that's a bunch of nonsense, but I won't be watching that, because I don't like to see, black people, getting tore down in the eyes of the public, you know what I mean? Because you only see them do this stuff, elite black entertainers, you know what I mean? Try to strip them of all their wealth so they can't pass it on to their family, but moving right along. What else did I want to touch on? Yeah, family, I got two stories up there in Minnesota. They running these tethers up there in Minnesota, family, running scams left and right up there in Minnesota. You know what I mean? And then, they getting away with it up there, but not so much now because all of the scamming that they doing up there in Minnesota, it's, gain national, it's gained the national spotlight. You know what I mean? Because it was getting swept under the rug for a while because they got all of their fellow, Somali tethers up there, in Minnesota in the government. So it was getting swept under the rug. But now Trump is bringing a lot of this to the light. They got a gazillion scams going on up there, up in Minnesota, family. And one of them, these individuals was scamming, I think it was like autistic people or some people with some kind of mental health disability. And that's a bunch of nonsense. You know what I mean? And this is a great example of why delineation is so important, family, because these people can't, throw this stuff on the FBA society. They're forced to deal with their own tethers, and this is why they got so much of a problem now with the FBA delineation movement, because we ain't getting out here and advocating for, these immigrant tethers, who come up over here and undermine our best needs and interests, you know what I mean? And they can't, dump things on. And if you notice, when Trump's getting up there speaking, he's being really specific about, the foreign groups that's committing these crimes, because he straight up said it's the Somali, community. And they got a lot of scams going on up there in Minnesota, family, regarding these, Somalis, So I got two stories of them running, scams up there, left and right, and this is why I love the delineation movement, because folks is forced to hold their own nuts. They can't put them on the FBA society. That's all I'm concerned with. The freshman said they can't blame us. Yeah, that's right, family. They can't put it on us no more. Delineation has exposed a lot of this nonsense and where it's coming from. But let's get right into it, family. I got two stories of Somalis, running big level schemes too. I'm talking about $1 million schemes these tethers was running.
Imagine being able
fair use.
Nelson. And I'm Rena Serginopoulos. We begin tonight with yet another suspect now indicted in the massive Feeding Our Future fraud scandal. The Minneapolis grocery store owner is the 77th defendant charged in that extensive scheme. And prosecutors allege...
Okay, this one was in Minneapolis. I think the other one is in Minnesota then.
He has ties to other suspected fraud as well. Lou Raguse joins us now with our top story. Lou?
Julie and Rena, 45.
No, I think they're both in Minnesota. My fault, family. Yeah, my mistake. They're both in Minnesota. I think Minneapolis is in Minnesota, if I ain't mistaken. I could be mistaken, but it is what it is.
5-year-old Usman Kamara.
The long and short of it is, they got these tethers running a gazillion scams up there, in Minnesota, and they got a large, they got all their people in, political office up there, because when one of them get in a particular industry, they kick down the door for all of their people. You know what I mean? And that's a bunch of nonsense.
Owns Kay's Dollar Grocery and Deli, also known as Kay's African Market, on Broadway in North Minneapolis. According to the indictment, the USDA disqualified him from participating in SNAP 10 years ago because of suspected fraud. And now he's charged in the largest pandemic fraud case.
So this tether been scamming over 10 years.
In the nation. Mr. Kamara, do you have any comment?
Yes, sir.
Usman Kamara is the 77th person charged in the massive $300 million Feeding Our Future fraud case. According to the
You know how low that is, saying you feeding people. I think he was saying he was, giving free meals to people in the community. That's low, saying he was, feeding children, this, that, and the other. This is nonsense. You got to be, a low tether to stoop this low.
The indictment. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Kamara claimed to serve more than 300,000 meals to children out of his small grocery store in North Minneapolis. Federal prosecutors say Kay's Dollar Grocery.
These tethers scam their own mom and dad if they get desperate enough.
And Deli, also called Kay's African Market, had already been disqualified from participating in SNAP because of suspected fraud. Now, a grand jury indictment charges him with stealing about $1 million meant to feed hungry children. The owner is also charged with...
How low is that, family? Scamming $1 million in funds that was meant to, feed hungry children. This dude is a lousy tether, and we got to keep exposing this, and, and we got to keep on delineating, because normally they would have tried to paint this filth on the FBA society. They can't do that now. They got to hold their own nuts because of the delineation movement.
Wire fraud for allegedly using more than $200,000 of the fraud money to buy the building where his store is located.
If I own this building and I want to be here for the next 20, 30 years, nobody can kick me out. It's mine.
NPR.
Yeah, they getting you out now. That's what they showing the proof of, that they showing and proving on, that they can get you out of there. This is why I'm glad, I don't like no political party, the right wing or the left wing, but one thing I do agree with Trump on is, getting out all of this damn mass immigration, stopping all of these damn tethers from coming over here and dropping off anchor babies and things like that. You know what I mean? I agree with him on that. Get them out. They doing more harm than good, if you ask me.
Our News interviewed Kamara in 2020 after he defended his store from rioters after the murder of George Floyd. Now, since he allegedly purchased the building with fraud money, the indictment says it's subject to...
One of the family says, the red state, blue state says, and they tell us to work hard. Yeah, they love to, say we FBAs, just got to work a little harder, this, that, and the third, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. These tethers got 50 million gazillion scams going on. I'm hearing, they even scammed and getting those CDL truck driver license, and a lot of them don't know how to drive, but they scamming their way to getting those CDL truck driving licenses, and they banging the trucks out. You see a lot of them scamming in the nursing field, printing up false documentation to say they nurses, and just doing a bunch of nonsense. You see them, doing nonsense to, foundational Black Americans. This is why, I keep my foot on the throttle and exposing these, scam tethers,
Forfeiture, so the feds can recoup some of the funds. However, past cases have indicated that other money referenced in the indictment, including a $90,000 wire transfer to Hong Kong, alleged bribes paid to a Feeding Our Future employee, and funds spent to pay off Kamara's credit cards, is likely gone. So the Feeding Our Future worker who Kamara...
It's a rotten tether who need to be deported quick, fast, and in a hurry. And I've seen something that Trump's administration removed something from Haiti. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe some of the family knows, can drop it in the chat, but he removed some kind of status to where, though, a lot of them Haitians gonna have to go back home. And I love, I'm with it, get them out of here, because a lot of them doing more harm than actually good. They're taking resources and aid that could be going to foundational Black Americans, This is why, I didn't vote, I ain't voting for neither party even though I like, Trump getting out the mass deportation thing, but if we would have voted for the Democrats, they would have kept flooding the zone with these damn, immigrants. That's what they was trying to do. They was trying to flood the zone with all of these immigrants to, stop our lineage-based demands we was making, for reparations and things like that. So they figured flood the zone.
Allegedly paid $87,000 in bribes, is charged, but that person fled to Somalia before the very first indictments came down. Of the 77 total defendants, 56 of them have been convicted so far. Julie.
It's 77 people involved in this. So this is a large-scale operation. Yeah, get these people out of here, man. They just scamming and finessing,
So I noticed you said 300 million in fraud now. We used to be saying 250 million, and now we have 77 defendants.
I don't care if it was 1 million. That's still a lot of money, but 250 million, you scamming and using it on the guise of you helping children. That's real low and sad, even for the tether class.
Do you know when this ends? The number of defendants, dollar amount?
Well, the U.S. Attorney's Office has not been definitive on that. We do know of specific people that are suspected of participating in the fraud who have not been charged yet. We don't know if they will be charged, but we do know that the U.S. Attorney's Office is also heavily looking into the autism fraud and the housing fraud. We expect more.
See, the autism fraud, it was scamming people with mental health disabilities and things like that. These people, it don't surprise me. They constantly, find ways to just get lower and lower the damn tether class.
To happen with that very soon.
All right. Thank you, Lou.
Tonight, residents in Monticello.
Yeah, family, but let's go to another scam that the Somalis was running. As soon as I find it. Here we go. And it was a lot of them involved in this. This is another, high level, fraud scheme.
Autism services. The autism.
This is the one about
a massive fraud scheme.
Fair use, fair use.
Uncovered in Minnesota found money intended for social services has been allegedly siphoned indirectly into the pockets of the Somali terrorist group Al-Shabaab. Somali immigrants in Minnesota have reportedly been abusing systems meant to help the most.
That's why they really do need to regulate, this immigration thing, because we getting people over here all willy-nilly. We don't know who the hell we getting over here. They running scams left and right. You can have people over here that's ops to the USA, our nation, and undermine our country. They need to stop it, you know what I mean? Or do it in so low levels, and, do more vetting, the vetting process. If they're going to let people over, they got to vet them, and make sure they know all the logistics to these people before we just take them in.
Most unfortunate among us, including the latest federally funded autism services. The autism fraud scheme reportedly amassed $14 million through Medicare claims for services.
Yeah, on Leus, the money who says the money could have went to foundational Black Americans whose blood, sweat, and tears built this country called America. Yup, this is why I say we don't, keep doing what we doing, delineating and not supporting none of these minority coalitions, immigration, none of that, because it don't benefit us. You know what I mean? These people will get over here, and come up giving all of these resources and aid, then look down upon our FBA lineage. Talk about we don't need no reparations when you fled. You ain't entitled to no reparations, no way. You know what I mean? When the going gets tough, these tethers want to flee over here and then do a bunch of telling us that, well, we don't need no reparations, this, that, and the other. Damn that. I say we doing the right thing by delineating and, just focusing on our lineage, and we're making more positive strides. We're making more gains than what we ever made, trying to have these minority coalitions and just going along with the Democratic plantations agenda, because their agenda, along with that Pan-Africanism thing, and even the Hebrew Israelite thing, is, it lumps us into these minority coalitions to where, though, it wipes out our unique FBA lineage. And we can't have that, and we won't be wiped out. We're going to keep, advocating for lineage-based justice. And that's how we're going to get our leg up.
Services that were never provided involving kids who never had autism. And the Somali immigrants behind this web of schemes have allegedly stolen billions from taxpayers, much of the money going back to the Somali government.
Damn, they just said billions. So that's even larger of a scheme than I previously thought.
Where it would then end up in the hands of terrorists. Manhattan Institute investigative reporter Ryan Thorpe was one of the first exposing the schemes for their ties to terrorism. With us now, Ryan, a line.
And they got ties to terrorism. That's a bunch of nonsense, you know?
From your story stuck out. The largest funder of al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer, and you cite an unnamed source for that. What is the evidence that...
And Brother Tariq Nasheed points this out a lot. Whenever you see, you know, one tether in a high position at a company, a supervisor, a manager, a foreman, this, that, or the other, you typically going to see like 10 or 20 other of their people, you know, because they, you know, get high level ranking positions, then flood the zone with all of their fellow immigrant tethers. You know what I mean? It's such as what we got going on up there in Minnesota. That's why a lot of this wasn't brought to the light in the forefront, you know, because the officials up there, you know, ain't nothing but Somali tethers. So they was working in collaboration to see that they people get away with this type nonsense.
All of this money that was taken and the billions upon billions of increased funding in Minnesota for social services ended up in Somalia.
Well, billions of dollars of government welfare money is missing in the state of Minnesota.
How do we define missing?
Well, the fraud is so bad that the U.S. Attorney's Office has come out and indicated that they believe their entire government programs, where the fraudulent claims outstrip the legitimate ones. There are cases where indictments have come down or guilty pleas.
Look at these tethers. You could tell they now in FBA. Just look at their hairline and look at their disposition.
Pleas are already in to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars that were fraudulently obtained, filing false claims alongside doctored paperwork. And the indictments are continuing to come. And the U.S. Attorney's Office has made very clear that this is a network of fraud schemes stacked upon fraud schemes, and that while the true dollar figure...
They got a gazillion tethers frauding up there in Minnesota, you know what I mean? And they got the local government full of these Somali tethers, you know what I mean?
In terms of stolen funds at this point isn't quite clear. It's safe to say that we're talking about billions of dollars.
Okay. It's pretty wild, some of the things that you lay out, including one group called Feeding the Future that went from getting $3.4 million in 2019 to $200 million 2 years later. They grew faster than NVIDIA. How did nobody see that? Or is it that people and the government and those who are supposed to be the watchdog?
People in that local government is full of some Somali tethers. That's how it, you know, they was able to get away with such a big scheme for a little bit of time. But now they caught, you know, because it's gained, you know, national widespread coverage. But, you know, they fellow Somali tethers up there in local government was working in conjunction with them, you know, to see that it's swept under the rug.
Like Tim Walz, like Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, there just weren't looking.
I think it's safe to say that there was a real unwillingness or inability among Democratic state officials in Minnesota to recognize some pretty obvious alarm bells here.
And the Democrats, they like this damn, you know, immigration. That's why, you know, we can't support the Democrats. But on the same note, I ain't rocking with the Republicans. That's why I say, you know, hold the vote, you know, sit it out on the couch, how we been doing to lineage-based things is done to where though our group could get something tangible. Damn, just voting for the sake of voting to say that we voting, you know, because the Democrats are really harming us, you know, with that mass immigration. You know, you got people running 50 million gazillion scams, you know, coming up over here, eating up resources and aids that could be going to foundational Black Americans whose ancestors built this damn nation, you know, and they'll turn a blind eye to us, yet give all the resources and aid to these other groups, minority coalitions, rainbow gang rights, you know, and immigrants coming over here, they get resources left and right, though.
All across these programs, claims were skyrocketing, absolutely spiraling out of control over a short period of time. And the reality is that the Somali community, which is where these large-scale fraud rings have been concentrated within this population in the state, it is a sizable voting bloc. It is a voting bloc you have to win. If you're
Like I told y'all, when the tethers, one of them makes headway and gets a high prominent position, they kick down the door for all of their people and flood the zone with their people. You know what I mean?
going to win political office in Minneapolis. And so I think that was likely a incentive here that made some people not want to look too closely at what's been going on.
Wow. And that would explain why now it's the U.S. attorney looking into it rather than the state.
Good. They took it from a local government, investigating these fraud cases and took it to, the U.S. attorney's office, to where though, that's over all of America, because that local government up there in, Minnesota, is filled with they fellow Somali tethers. So they going to work to make sure that this thing never gets brought to the surface.
State law enforcement or state fraud investigators. Is there any indication, Ryan, as you get, and obviously, it's one of those things you drop an investigative piece and then all of a sudden you get 1,000 more tips that this goes higher, like actually into state government? You get the last 30 seconds.
I can't confirm that, so I don't want to get out in front of my skis here. What I can say is that this story has generated additional tips, and it is something that
I just want to bring that to the attention. These Somalis got 50 million gazillion schemes going on. This video is a little long. I was going to let it play, but y'all get the gist of what I'm trying to say. We got to keep on delineating and making, lineage-based demands, you know what I mean? Because these people come over here and work in opposition to the positive strides we trying to bring in the FBA society. So we doing the right thing by not supporting this immigration. Immigration don't support us as foundational Black Americans, so damn that, we doing the right thing, but moving right along. The next thing I want to touch on, family, I don't know if any of the family has seen this. I came across this story initially on TikTok. There was a brother found hanging from a tree in a golf course, you know what I mean? And that's a bunch of nonsense. Now the authorities up there in Wisconsin, I guess this is where that happened. I think it's where it happened. They're trying to rule to death, him unaliving himself. And that's typically what they always throw out there, when these Black men are found, hanging from a tree. They always try to say it was them unaliving themselves. And we, with that Black FBA mindset, we know better than that. I think they're being targeted by white supremacists, or, something's going on. But brothers for sure as hell, ain't just going around all willy-nilly and unaliving themselves, and that's typically the narrative that they try to put out there in the mainstream news media, but I ain't buying it, and we're going to walk through and talk about this brother, Troy Medley. He was found hanging from a tree, at a golf course, and ain't no video surveillance for him to just be hanging from a tree. That's a golf course, for, God's sakes. Where's the video surveillance at?
It's so easy to become.
Let me pause that, family, so I don't get copyrighted for this commercial or anything. Fair use.
We begin here, though, with a family's call for answers after a man is discovered dead on a Brookfield golf course. A warning, though, the details in this story may be difficult to hear. Police say first responders found Troy Medley hanging from a tree at the Brookfield Hills golf course near I-94 and Moreland Road last week. 12 News Kendall Keys joining us there live tonight. And Kendall, police believe Medley.
It ain't no unaliving himself. I ain't buying that, and we see an influx of this, I see it left and right, videos coming on my TikTok about, Black men just, found hanging from a tree. And I think the white supremacists got their dirty hands involved in this, if you ask me.
Medley died by suicide.
Right, Blake. While their investigation remains open, right now Brookfield police say the evidence points to suicide. Meanwhile, Medley's family says they're without closure, and they're calling on police to conduct a thorough investigation.
Yeah, family, the red state, blue state. It's funny how they ain't never got no surveillance. Now, this happened at a damn golf course, and usually golf courses got 50 million gazillion video cameras around that, vicinity. That don't make no sense.
Last week, early Thursday morning,
callers thought they saw someone deceased They're advising it's on the golf course.
A death investigation unfolding on the Brookfield Hills golf course. Police blocking off surrounding roads for hours.
When I called and they told me what happened, I just was in a state of disbelief.
Sheena Medley speaking with 12 News from Hawaii on Zoom. Her brother, Tori, the man found dead on the golf course. Brookfield police saying he was found with a strap around his neck, the other end attached to a tree branch.
Does he have any connection to that golf course that you know about?
No, not that we know of.
Furthermore, what would he even be doing around the golf course? The man's own sister said he ain't got no connection to the damn golf course. That's mighty suspicious, you know. And I think the dirty hands of the racist white supremacists are at play, you know, in a great deal of these stories, you know, as of late, where we're hearing left and right, you know, black men, you know, found hanging from a tree, and they just try to write it off, you know, to prevent, you know, widespread backlash of them just unaliving themselves. I ain't buying that whatsoever.
He was living in Milwaukee, down off of St. Paul. So he didn't have a vehicle. And so the question is, how did he get out there? When did he get out there? Why did he go out there?
Police saying that day they believed the death.
Yeah, why would he go out there? His sister said he would have had no dealings in that area. That's just mighty fishy and don't even sound right.
To be a suicide. More than a week later, with a completed autopsy, Brookfield police say that's still the case. Their investigation remaining open.
If it was suicide, we'll accept that. But if it was something else, we'll accept that too. We just need to know that all I's have been dotted, T's have been crossed, and it's been fully reviewed and investigated, which is only fair.
Sheena asking anyone.
I say, sister, keep your foot on the gas pedal, you know, believe nothing of what you're hearing now, that it was, you know, him unaliving himself, and continue, you know, to demand justice for your brother, because I don't see, you know, him doing that either, you know, not even knowing, going into that area, you know, and not having no business or dealings in that area, you know, and we hear it left and right, you know, black men, you know, being hung from a tree, and they, you know, say that it's them just unaliving themselves. We ain't buying that on the black grassroots, you know. We know it was foul play involved, you know what I mean? And I hope, you know, you get justice, and just keep on demanding, you know, that you need to know what happened to your brother, and don't just go along with the narrative that they pushing out there, sis.
One with information or possible surveillance video to come forward.
And I just wanted people to know that he had a name. Yeah. He was a really good person, a good man, and he had a family that loved him incredibly.
You can certainly understand the family's push for answers. Kendall, Brookfield police tell you they do have some surveillance video.
Right, Blake, they're in the process of reviewing that surveillance video and say they're still working to figure out what exactly it captured. They say they're still actively investigating his death.
Alrighty, Kendall Key is leading us off tonight live in Brookfield. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully they get to the bottom of, you know, what happened to this brother, you know, but I ain't buying that he just, you know, unalived himself, you know. They say that, you know, more often than not when these brothers are found hanging from a tree, you know, that's a it's almost like a talking point that they put out there, you know, and give them, you know, talking points to say, you know, in these type of cases, you know, as to prevent, you know, widespread backlash, you know, from putting out the real cause of death. Because I feel, you know, white supremacy had their hands involved with this one. But moving right along, family. But RIP to that brother, and my condolences goes out to his friends and family as well. But what else did I want to touch on? Yeah, family, here go, you know, this Pan-African ops unconsciously, and, you know, some other, you know, Pan-African ops saying that reparations, you know, don't need to come in the form of money or a check, and damned if it, you know, don't have anything to do with, you know, being money or a check. That's what reparations is. You know, everyone else got restorative justice, you know, cash payments, the red Native American, you know, Jewish people, you know, this, that, and the other, you know. So people, you know, they want to drag their feet and, you know, try to offer up everything under the sun to us FBAs other than cash reparations. And we ain't going for that. You know what I mean? That's a bunch of nonsense. Anything claiming to be reparations that ain't involving cash payments, you know, that's not reparations at all. Because, you know, we can build, you know, once we get our hands on that, you know, them economics, that capital. We can build and create institutions and things like that that's going to benefit FBA society. We never have a problem building, but it's just that we were locked out of, having wealth. And, they took wealth from our asses, with enslaving our ancestors. This nation was built, by the blood, sweat, and tears and hands of foundational Black Americans. So I say the hell if reparations is anything, but, cash and, getting payouts, to every foundational Black American. You know what I mean? So they could try to, change the narrative and, muddy the waters and say that, reparations can be, this, that, and the other, if they want, but we going to continue to beat the horn of reparations is, beat the drum rather, that reparations is, cash payouts to descendants of freedmen. We're going to keep putting that messaging out there in the public lexicon, because these people have ulterior motives along the Pan-Africanists, the scam Africans, because they, more than not, they tied to that Democratic plantation, such as this conscious lead. They just are a voice box to regurgitate, Democratic talking points, to try to get us on this hamster wheel to vote without getting a damn thing in return. And damn that. But here go this unconscious lead with his fellow, scam African talking about reparations can be something else other than, cash payouts. And that's a trick bag, if you ask me. Anything saying reparations that ain't regarding cash payouts is a trick bag in my book.
So if what you desire is a check from the federal government for being Black, then that's a position that you can take, and I'll talk.
And he's trying to muddy the waters. We advocate that reparations is lineage based, not just because you being Black, because what is that? You got Black people over here now that immigrated here that, never had a hand in building this country, wasn't here at the foundation. And they know that saying just Black, will be shot down because that makes it race-based. That's why we advocate for lineage-based reparations. So they just trying to muddy the waters on saying this, And these people are tied to the Democratic plantation put out here, they Democratic shills put out here to, spew the Democrats' talking points, try to get us to vote without getting absolutely nothing for that vote.
Talk in a moment about why I don't think that is a formidable position. That's a position you can take, but that's not reparations. That's not what Malcolm said. That's not what the Black Panther said. That's not what Queen Mother Moore said. That's not what that's not what they said. Kelly House.
And he said that's not what some people said, in history, and while, we don't give it, a damn, what was said in history, we're living for now, this is the thing that, a lot of these Pan-Africans just don't get, the old ideology on Pan-Africanism, it was a strategy, and it never got our people anywhere, it dilutes our specific lineage, and us making lineage-based demands is getting us farther than what we ever got with the Pan-Africanism thing. And furthermore, our good brother, Dr. Martin Luther King, he was standing on reparations lineage business. And that's, a part of the major reason why the white power structure took our brother out. You know what I mean? Because he was standing on lineage-based reparations. Right before, our brother was taken up out of here and unalived, he said, we coming to get that check, So, I'm standing on, what brother Martin Luther King said, but these Pan-Africans really get me, these scam Africans, because they always try to make the argument, well, such and such people in history was Pan-African, this, that, and the other. That's like saying, even in school, when it's old, outdated textbooks, they update the textbooks and bring in new material to get the students to where they got to go. You know what I mean? To give them updated knowledge, And the same way we as FBAs, we updated, for our people by, repping the soil, pushing for lineage base, and that's getting us further. We updated the material because Pan-Africanism was just a strategy, and that strategy has gotten us nowhere. So we had to update the material to get our people that proper leg up that we so rightfully deserve.
Attempt to establish the ex-slave mutual benefits and pension fund was not about getting a check from the government. A pension is.
So you could bet your last damn dollar that what this dude is talking, he's a paid, Democratic shill along with that unconscious lead, and I say that, Pan-Africanism, is tied into the Democratic Party all the time, because more often than not, we see a lot of a great deal of these Pan-Africanisms are tied into, speaking Democratic talking points, you know what I mean? Because they benefit from, being down with the Democratic Party as Pan-Africans, because they feel in all actuality that the more of their people's coming over, that don't benefit us foundational Black Americans. We've gotten further standing on lineage business.
Is about getting residual resources that goes to a community, right? That is in perpetuity, that outlives the individual payment that was received. That's why it was
and and payments, they're not just going to be, foundational Black Americans squandering the money off, because he like the payments going to go, but trying to make the point that cash payments ain't needed is other things that can be implemented, and damn that, because with the money we'll be able to build, businesses and institutions and have, economic wealth, generational wealth that's going to benefit, all of FBA society. Plus, it'll stimulate the economy, because we ain't going somewhere else, with the money. It's going to stay over here, locked into America. You know what I mean? We're going to circulate that money through America. You know what I mean? We ain't foreigners and going to take that money and run off somewhere else, And if they know that we was going to just squander the money, they would have been gave it. But the problem is they know we FBAs is going to build and, practice group economics and build institutions that could directly benefit our people, So cash payments is what's needed. Damn, anything else other than cash payments, We need those cash payments, and we can be able to build and create things for ourselves that will, benefit FBA society.
a mutual pension fund. So the work that we have done as a people to build all the 246 years of free labor, that was the basis for America to be a global superpower, and the economic benefits that accrue to white folks and their henchmen as a result of that work. The best way for us as a people to protect ourselves from that kind of violence is an approach to reparations that is sustainable beyond individual checks.
No, these dudes are paid Democratic shills, you know what I mean? Just put out here to muddy the waters. We demand that you cut the damn check, and we going to get it, because we FBA is going to keep, riding and representing the lineage, and demanding lineage-based justice. And reparations just ain't for people because they Black, because you got Black people over here that don't come from the lineage that built this nation of America, so they ain't entitled to it. They came over here willingly. It's lineage-based. These people are just paid shills put out here to muddy the waters, family. So I just wanted to bring some light and awareness to that. But moving right along. Family, I'm going to be moving over here to Twitter to get this video. I hate when I got to jump around, but that's just what I got to do sometimes, because certain platforms that have what you want, certain platforms won't. Well, X now, so I'm jumping over here to X. Damn, why would it sign me out? I hate when it does that. I was already logged in on my phone. It should have been logged in over here. Just a second, family. Bear with me. It logged me out for some strange reason. Hold on, family, just a second. Here we go. Fair use.
Maybe I'll put the video up. Tariq Nasheed is apparently subliminally talking about.
Yeah, family, I want to talk about this, this op, Captain Tazaryah, out here, trying to disrespect the lineage and put out the false narrative that TS Giselle, which is a Twitter troll, is, somehow the first lady of FBA. And we, with that FBA mindset, we know better than that. TS Giselle is a Twitter troll, who is a trans man, pretending to be a woman. And we all know that, who gets in Twitter spaces and trolls, and he's trying to put out the false narrative that TS Giselle is a representative of FBA, and I don't like, that Hebrew Israelite thing, no way, along with the Pan Africanism thing, because that's, these things are set up to, erase our lineage, because they lump us in with, Puerto Ricans, Jamaicans, Africans, and try to say we are the same people, which we not. They the same thing, if you ask me, just dressed up in different ways. You know what I mean? Because they undermine our lineage and erase, specific lineage-based demands that we FBAs are out here standing on. So I got the audio and the video of this Captain Tazaryah, which is a op, trying to get out here and, put out the false narrative that, T.S. Giselle is the first lady of FBAs, when we know in all actuality, he's a man, trying to pretend to be a woman, and he's not more than a troll, you know what I mean? So, it's a bad faith argument that, people are just, people just try to, a lot of these people, they're ops, and I believe that this is coming down from the top. We seeing, FBA lineage, it's heavily under attack right now, and a lot of people got the same talking points. They coming in here with the same, bad faith arguments, and they'll try to, say that they coming at Brother Tariq, but they using Brother Tariq as a proxy to attack our whole FBA lineage, you know what I mean? And damn that, I got to get out here and stand on business for the lineage, and like I said, the Hebrew Israelite thing, along with the Pan-Africanism thing, the Pan-Africanism thing, they're the same, things, just, dressed up in different ways. They both undermine our lineage. It tries to lump us into minority coalitions, vague things, that erase our FBA lineage and our ties to this land. You know what I mean? So, damn that, you know what I mean? So I got the audio and the video of them. We're going to get into it. Fair use.
Hey man, I'm gonna be real brief, man, and maybe I'll put the video up. Tariq Nasheed is apparently subliminally talking about me because he's too vagina to say my name directly. So I'm the person that he's trying to call COINTELPRO XYZ because I text and ask.
And now that we represent the lineage, we see a heavy attack on our FBA lineage family, delineating and picking up the soil, because folks made a lot of money off our FBA lineage. They was making money off our behinds. We FBAs, we say what's hot and not, and a lot of people are losing out on that money bag now that we ain't, being lumped into all of these different things, that erase our unique lineage, and we're just picking up the soil. So a lot of people, they feel left out, and they feel that, they ain't down no more and ain't a part of, what we got going on in terms of representing the lineage. And another thing this Captain Tazaryah cat tried to do was, he tried to, make FBAs put the framework up as that, to try to say that we some kind of group, and we ain't no damn group. So I know this is coming down from the top. A lot of these people are agents in all actuality that are getting out here, and talking bad on the lineage, because a lot of people, they ain't getting this no more. We drying that up for them, that cash flow, now that FBAs are representing the lineage, you know what I mean, and just being about ourselves, and not being lumped in with other people, and they just gonna have to be mad, that's something, we don't give a damn if people mad. We're going to represent the lineage whether who likes it or not. I keep telling folks to move because this FBA freight train coming through, and if you don't move, you're gonna get ran and moved to the side, you know what I mean? But let's continue.
Asked them if a man pretending to be a woman that's calling himself the queen of the FBA was something that they represented. And then he gets mad at me for asking him, and I'm only asking him because he's the...
Because it's a bad faith argument to begin with. You framing it, if, a trans man can be, is the queen of FBA. And when we FBAs, we ain't got no leaders and no hierarchy. The dude T.S. Giselle was just trolling. So, yeah, anybody gonna get mad at that because, your argument is in bad faith. You framed it wrong to begin with, and you done that deliberately. You know what I mean? And furthermore, you can't stop somebody from trolling you. Trolls are always gonna come. How can you stop somebody from trolling you? Anybody could be trolled.
quote unquote head, especially on Twitter Spaces. So I figure I go to the source because we had a relationship, and then instead of him respecting it, he calls me agent, talks about me subliminally. That shit don't really matter. What's diabolical though is that straight men who's supposed to be about foundational black people would allow a gay man to represent himself as the queen of your so-called movement.
We don't have a movement. See, the argument is just a bad faith argument. He framed it wrong, and this is done deliberately. We see this, talking point that FBAs are a group coming from multiple people, and that ain't no coincidence. That's coming down from the top. You know what I mean? And you can't stop somebody from trolling the lineage. You know what I mean? You could be trolled, Captain Tazaryah. Anybody can be trolled. We can't stop nobody, but everyone that with some good common sense know that T.S. Giselle, is a man and just trolling, FBA is a lineage. And in that lineage, you're going to have people with different mindsets and ideologies, you know what I mean? Furthermore, to add to that, you know what I mean? So, yeah, this is just a bad faith argument, and anyone would get mad the way in which he framed it, is T.S. Giselle, which is a man, trying to pretend to be a woman, the queen of FBA. It's a bad faith argument. He done that deliberately. You know what I mean?
Movement. What's worse, asking if it's true or letting some straight
You shouldn't even ask no shit like that, homie. You know it. You know it's a bad faith argument. You just doing that because you don't stand the game from us representing our FBA lineage. You know what I mean? Because typically, cats, don't like that because it leaves them out there. They feel like they're not a part of it. You know what I mean? Because we ain't letting our history and our culture that's unique to over here on American soil, go to other people to capitalize off of it. Because Pan-Africanism, along with that, Hebrew Israelites mess is part of the reason why Fat Joe felt so comfortable to come out the side of his face and claim that Latinos created hip hop. We ain't doing that. We gatekeeping and making sure that all our contributions and things that we made over here on American soil get locked into FBA society. And that's why a lot of these people are mad, and trying to attack Tariq and the lineage. And they'll use Tariq, as a way to attack all of us, So that's why I get out here, and stand on lineage business when these false narratives are put out there.
Letting some gay man troll you to being that. A gay man could never troll the Israelite movement, and we accept.
Anybody could be trolled, homie. You can't stop somebody from trolling you. So that's just a bad faith argument. Anybody could be trolled in all actuality. Even I could be trolled. I get trolled on the internet,
And we think it's funny, and we think it's cute. We would never do that. But the FBA apparently will let a gay man or a trans man troll them. So whose vagina?
Yeah, this dude is just a op, putting out the same talking points, as a way to try to attack our FBA lineage. The way he framed the thing, all was wrong from the gate. He tried to frame us as a movement, this, that, and the other. And, regardless of, how people feel, our FBA lineage for sure as hell ain't gonna stop being represented. We gonna keep, beating on the drum for the lineage. You know what I mean? People could feel how they want to feel and take it how they want to take it. But this FBA freight train ain't slowing down. You better move or you're gonna get moved, because either way, we gonna get our just due and we gonna keep representing and putting on for our people, But moving right along. Now I want to talk about this scam African, Seti, but I got to go over here to YouTube, family. This guy got 50 million videos, with FBA in the title, talking down upon our lineage, which is a bunch of nonsense, because in all actuality, Seti sees that Pan-African, that Pan-African scheme ain't, going the way he thought it was. So he got to put FBA in the title because he knows the lineage, our lineage is popular right now. It's a hot topic. So in order for him to get a couple of views and things like that, he got to come at the lineage, and put our lineage, in the title, and that's a bunch of nonsense. You know what I mean? He's talking some, this guy said you guys got Pan-Africans in the museum, the Hidden History Museum. Now he's talking about take them out of the museum, this, that, and the other. While there are Pan-Africans in the museum, they're foundational Black Americans, you know, and we can have whoever the hell we want furthermore in the museum. It sounds like Seti just mad, disgruntled, and hating, you know, because we making moves as foundational Black Americans, and we bringing things into reality and making things happen, you know, with that Pan-Africanism thing could have never done in a million years, you know. Pan-Africanism stagnated our people and, you know, put us all in the same boat, you know, as continental Africans, and which erased our unique history as foundational Black Americans that was forged over here on American soil. You know what I mean? Pan Africanism been around for so long, you know, we had to retire and bury it. You know, it was just a strategy. And once a strategy ain't working, it's time to discard that, you know, and us picking up lineage base and representing and putting on for the lineage has gotten us further than, you know, what Pan Africanism could ever have in a million years. And furthermore, you can't use Pan Africanism was an old strategy we tried to use. It wasn't nothing but, you know, a weapon that we thought we had to, you know, combat systematic racism, white supremacy. We thought we had allies, you know, in trying to, you know, be down with people, you know, in the diaspora. But it come to find out, you know, we were the only ones standing on business. We look around and nobody else but FBAs was standing there, you know, because all tethers know is put on their flip-flops and flee, you know, so it wasn't nothing but a strategy, you know, and once a strategy don't work, it's time to pivot to strategy B, and strategy B is lineage based, and it's been working fine. You know, we've been bringing things about. We got the talks of reparations in the public lexicon, and we making, you know, more gains than what Pan-Africanism, you know, ever could have gotten us, you know, and you can't use old weapons to fight new wars or you're destined to be defeated. You know, Pan-Africanism was an old weapon. So we had to update the weapons, you know. This is like I said, you know, that Pan-Africanism thing is like, you know, having old school books in a classroom full of kids, you know, but if the school books ain't teaching the kids, you know, how to get by in today's society, it's time to do away with them old school books. You got to update, you know, the textbooks, you know, and that's what we've done, you know, and we getting further than what we ever gotten, you know, by representing the lineage. So, you know, Seti's just mad, frustrated, you know, old head who been on the internet for so long and ain't really gaining no traction. So the only way he can gain some sort of traction is put, you know, FBAs all up in the title of his videos and be running his mouth. So we're going to get into it because he's talking a bunch of nonsense. He constantly, you know, is mentioning FBA, you know, acting like he ain't an ops, you know, saying it subtly, you know, as to, you know, not really say it, but he's saying it. So, you know, we don't go in full fledged on him. You know what I mean? And damn that, you know, we standing on lineage business. I don't give a damn if these old scam Africans don't like it or not. This FBA freight train gonna keep moving and we gonna keep standing on lineage business, you know. But let me pull up the one where he was saying about remove them from the Hidden History Museum. I think this is it, family. Fair use.
How did this?
No, family, this is the first one I'm gonna touch on where he's saying, you know, FBAs never practice Pan-Africanism to, you know, we never practice Pan-Africanism to say it's dead, and we ain't never went to the continent of Africa, this, that, and the other. And, you know, Africans from the continent, continental Africans ain't trying to be over in Africa. They fleeing over here. You know, we ain't got to use an outdated ideology, you know, that don't benefit us, you know, that other people get to capitalize and make money off our asses, you know, while we're sitting there left holding an empty bag, you know. Seti is just a mad, frustrated scam African who's mad that, you know, that the FBA delineation movement and us representing our lineage is drying that bag up for him. That's why a lot of people are mad and frustrated that we drying up that Pan-Africanism thing along with that Hebrew Israelite thing that tried to generalize us and throw us all into the same category as these people, you know, when these people don't stand on the kind of business we do. But let's get into it, family. Fair use.
All right, family. I ain't even got my comments on. Let me get them on up there. Okay. Yeah, want to scapegoat the concept of Pan-Africanism. Yeah.
I even heard this scam African Seti talking about FBA is an ideology. See, they keep this talking point keep coming down. We keep hearing this, over and over again. And FBA is a lineage. He knows it's a lineage, but he's deliberately trying to, frame it as an ideology. That's Pan Africanism. That's a outdated ideology that we buried, and we, in turn, we birthed, lineage based, being about the lineage and representing for our people and our specific history that happened over here on American soil. The days of looking back to Africa are old, because that's a deliberate disrespect and a slap in the face to our ancestors that paved the way over here on American soil. And damn Seti and anyone else who tried to say otherwise,
Yeah, I got family in here. Yeah, that's what's up. Which I know niggas ain't had no part of at all. You see what I'm saying? Ain't got no.
Okay, all the holla gang, all Hebrews don't teach the same thing. Okay, yeah, but the majority of them, what I see, they try to lump them all, everybody all in the same category with Puerto Ricans, Jamaicans, Africans, and that's a way to me to try to undermine FBA lineage. I stand on lineage, you know what I mean? That's all I stand on. I don't need to have these minority coalitions and all with all of these other people that secretly work behind the scenes to undermine our people. Damn that, I stand on lineage business.
Ain't never had no part of, but they scapegoat Pan-Africanism. You see, saying,
And we was the main ones lifting up Pan-Africanism, you know what I mean? And the energy wasn't reciprocated. We think we have allies in the war fighting systematic racism, white supremacy. They get over here, these continental Africans and these Caribbean tethers, they take a knee to the system of racism, white supremacy. And that never been FBA's disposition. We used to fighting racism, white supremacy, and injustice. We always stand on business.
Pan-Africanism misled us. You see, no, nigga. The titty ballet misled you, nigga. That's what misled you. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so there is some Hebrew Israelites that's down. Hebrew Israelites that's down. If they down, then that's good. But I'm talking about the ones that ain't down. You know what I mean? So let me clarify that. The ones that ain't down, they opposition, and we too getting them out the paint. You know what I mean? Because some of them that I see, a good deal of them, I'm not gonna say all, but a good deal of them Hebrew Israelites, they try to, throw us all into one category, and that erases our unique lineage as foundational Black Americans. And that, undermines the need for our reparations, you know what I mean, too, if we let that go on. So that narrative got to be checked, that we all going to be lumped into one category. And that's what Pan-Africanism seeks to do. But, yeah, let me get on this, family.
Oh, wow. I was in the hood. You feel what I'm saying? See, you can't, while I was in the hood. Nigga, I was the only nigga talking about, and didn't even really have too many conversations. You see what I'm saying? Out of the whole hood, nigga, when I was studying, it was not another nigga nowhere in sight. You see what I'm saying? Talking about what I was talking about. You see what I'm saying? Them niggas was out there with the sack.
But you looking in the hood, you look in a place, if you going to McDonald's to get food, you can't expect, food with proper nutrients in it. You went to McDonald's, you got tons of FBA brothers that got Black consciousness. It don't mean we gotta subscribe to, some Pan-Africanism, you know what I mean? So miss me with that nonsense, you know what I mean?
You see what I'm saying? Them niggas was out there with the 40 ounce. You see what I'm saying? Them niggas was out there in our love, family. You see, niggas out there.
This guy's a clown, man, and he keeps mentioning FBA to try to, get some, algorithm boost, because he knows that FBA is a popular topic, us discussing the lineage, on these social media platforms. So he's just trying to gain momentum, because that whole scam Africanism, train is, coming to a halt.
They're rolling up. You see, niggas was trying to get rims on their car. You see, niggas was trying to hook up sound systems.
Listen to the part he says, it's coming up though, where he says, we weren't trying to go, we ain't go back to Africa, or we weren't trying to go back to continental Africans trying to get the hell out of there. So why would we even want to go there, That's a bunch of nonsense.
Systems in the car. Niggas wasn't talking about no Chancellor Williams. They wasn't talking about no Dr. Ben or no Marcus Garvey or no Malcolm X. That
Family, we
wasn't
got a
not
troll
at
in here,
all
this
what
Kemet person. We got
niggas
to
was
get him up
talking
out of
about.
here if you
And ain't talking about
you a
now.
moderator.
You see?
I'm gonna go ahead and block
So,
him.
you know, I'm trying to figure out how Pan-Africanism misled us. I'm trying to figure this out. When did it happen?
They meant to do good by Pan-Africanism, you know, but Pan-Africanism is just too vague, you know, and it forces, you know, us into, you know, representing some Africa, which most of the time continental Africans ain't representing damn Africa, you know what I mean? So we ain't representing that. We representing the soil, and they was meaning to do good by it, but it was outdated material, and we now updated the textbooks and the material, you know, keeping it in mind of that, you know, classroom scenario I was talking about. You can't use outdated textbooks, you know, on the kids. You gotta, you know, update the material every once in a while, and you can't use, you know, old weapons to fight new wars, or you're destined to be defeated. So we've updated the material. We standing on this lineage business, you know, because Pan Africanism has failed in so many ways. We got to be honest, you know, and I know some of the elders might have meant good by it, but you know, if they was around in today's climate, you know, to see us getting undermined by all these continental Africans, this, that, or the other, they probably would, you know, drop that. You know, if they was FBA lineage, you know, I know they for sure as hell wouldn't go along with, you know, the undermining of our people, you know. So like I said, it's outdated material. We're updating the material and textbooks, you know, and we just standing on lineage business from here on out, you know. And this is why these scam Africans are mad, because we stopped the gravy train. You know, a lot of people are used to capitalizing off of our asses as foundational Black Americans, and with us representing the lineage, you know, we're being, you know, exclusive, you know, instead of all inclusive, and that's the part that they hate.
Because even within what you call, you know, Black America, the broader aspect of Black America, say 40 million Black Americans, in quote unquote, how these niggas conceive Pan-Africanism, somebody that's going back to Africa. Out of 40 million Black people in America, nigga, you be hard pressed to find 1,000 niggas that say right now that they're actively in the process of trying to move back to Africa.
Why would we want to go to Africa when the continental African don't even want to be in Africa? They don't represent no damn Pan-Africanism. I just wanted to show you how like illogical this guy is, you know? Why the hell would we want to go back to, you know, Africa? Why would we want to, you know, go to Africa rather, you know, and you know, represent some Africa, you know, when they don't even want to do it. You know, they trying to get the hell out of here. It's just best we keep on representing the lineage, you know what I mean? Because we ain't some generic African. Yeah, you know, everybody got, you know, African in them, you know, because as far as we know, the world, you know, started from there, and then people, you know, branched out. But you know, you don't, people don't try to lump, you know, all Puerto Ricans in the same. I mean, all like Latinos in the same category, you know, like a Puerto Rican and Mexican. Why the hell they try to do it with us? You know, them days is over with. We representing the lineage, and you know, people gonna have to deal with that. You know, and I also see Seti, you know, make some comments about that I didn't particularly like about Elijah Muhammad. You know, Garvey was better than Elijah Muhammad, and I disagree because you know I judge a person, you know, how good you know they are or wouldn't, you know, as a black leader on what tangibles did they build up. You know, Elijah Muhammad built tangibles that's still around. You know, the Nation of Islam is still around. You can't deny that. They taught people how to do for self. And Garvey, you know, he did some cool things, but that material, you know, it's not applicable nowadays. You know what I mean? And he for sure as hell ain't better than our FBA brother Elijah Muhammad. You know what I mean? Because Garvey had to come over here to America to get it popping. He didn't get it popping in Jamaica. You know what I mean? He didn't. You know, let's keep it real. He got around foundational Black Americans, and we, you know, boosted up his message. You know, and he was trying to get us to go to Africa, you know, to leave here and go to Africa, you know, and damn that. Why would we leave something where our ancestors got, you know, blood, sweat, and tears in the soil, and we built, you know, we built it up? Why would we leave that to, go back to Africa, when nobody in a FBA's family been in Africa for hundreds and hundreds of years. It just don't make no sense. So, he was wrong in that regard. Elijah Muhammad stood on a lot of truth and cleaned up a lot of brothers and sisters in the community off of drugs, this, that, and the other. So I always give him respect. And, he was one of the greatest, he was more greater than, for sure as hell, Garvey, in that regard, because he built tangibles, he had success and things that's still around. The Nation of Islam is still intact on up until this day. What Marcus Garvey tried to do, I think he tried to go back to Jamaica or something and run for office. I might be wrong or something like that. And they didn't even put him in. They got some, YT person in, so he was upset and frustrated with Jamaica. That's why he left and came over here and had to get the message popping. So yeah, we ain't obligated to pick up Africa when, no one else is. We got our own unique lineage and folks just gonna have to deal with that. You know what I mean? But this is what he was saying about the museum. I want to touch on that as well. The Hidden History Museum about having Pan-African, take them off the wall. It's hypocritical. FBA is an ideology, this, that, the other. I think this is it.
Thanks to Restore, Primetime is back.
This is my time.
I didn't want to be bold any longer.
Damn, hope I don't get copyrighted. Hold on, family. Fair use, fair use.
Africa, a black nationalist, black nationalist. He taught at Pan-Africanism. So when you talk about the great, Khalid Abdul Muhammad was a Pan-Africanist. That's what he was.
But he was foundational Black American, so we could have these individuals up because they belong to our lineage. And furthermore, like I was saying, I think if these individuals was around, even if they was Pan-Africanism, if they could see, how our people are being done today and, the influx of all of this mass immigration, these tethers coming over here to America, undermining us, getting in political office, they would say to hell with that as well, that Pan-Africanism thing, because it's outdated material. You can't use old weapons to fight new wars or you're going to fail. I'm going to keep reiterating that.
Okay, what I'm saying? So you mean to tell me I'm going to give up all these great minds for some shit you talking about? Man, nigga, you could beat it, man. You ain't that great. You're not on that level, and you must understand that. You see, you got I don't know what kind of agenda, and I'm talking in general now, and if a motherfucker take it personal, that's on them. Because you saying one thing, we calling you out. Why you got leaders in there? You see what I'm saying?
And like I said, we can have anybody we want to have in Hidden History Museum. If they foundational Black American, we can have them in there. Even if they weren't foundational Black American, what the hell are you doing? It sounds like he just mad that, we got a museum, and all of the years of, Pan-Africanism, this, that, and the third, them folks ain't got it popping. You know what I mean? That's been around. It was just relatively recent, we've always represented our lineage, but it was just relatively recent, when the delineation movement and things like that were brought about, you know what I mean? So we made more strides in that time than they made in all of them years, come on now. Shout out to FBA Business, Seti mad, we delineating and all his arguments are straw man. We go visit places and bring our FBA asses home. Yep, that's a good point, family. Then he brings up religion like who we worship. Yeah, he got like a gazillion videos, this dude on FBA. So, I just had to address it. I got to stand on truth to power, even if I'm the only one standing on it, but I know a lot of FBA family is with me because I've seen a few other, FBA channels addressing this, this nonsense, And, like I said, he keeps the name of FBA in his title to try to gain some algorithm boost, because he knows that damn Pan-Africanism thing is a dying brand, and we rebirth lineage base where we looking at our lineage over here on American soil. Everybody got some, African genetics, but we're going to keep representing, lineage base from here on out.
Take them down. If that ain't the philosophy that you cherish, then you should take them down. Talking
about take out the Pan-Africanists from the Hidden History Museum, out there in LA, like Francis Cress Welsing, this, that, and the other. Even if they was Pan-Africanism years ago, that's outdated material. If our ancestors and our elders were still around, I doubt that they would be pushing that, even if they did push it, because they will see it's a different ball game. You can't go to a baseball field with a basketball and expect to play ball. You know what I mean? It's just outdated material. We've revamped the material and we're pushing for lineage base, and we taking care of lineage business. You know what I mean? And we getting more done now than what that Pan-Africanism thing has done, and salute to B1 Business on the $10 dono.
Oh, I don't put up Muhammad, and I don't put up other groups. I don't put up Noble Drew Ali. I don't shoot them down, and then you look up on the walls and shit, and I used to go to play.
You just hating, dude. If you want a museum to do whatever you want in there, go create your own museum. But don't tell us in FBA society how we supposed to move and operate. We do what the hell when we want and what we want when we want. You know what I mean? And if there's Pan-Africans in the museum, they in the museum because they belong to our lineage. You know what I mean? And that is what it is.
Places. Wait, man. Motherfucker didn't put something like that. Ain't me, man. Y'all got to turn the cameras and show my teachers. I don't want to be behind nothing and it got some motherfuckers that ain't, a part of the ideology that I believe in. You feel what I'm saying? And so, wait a minute. Let me get this up here.
And we were the only people lifting up Pan-Africanism at one time, but we just seen we was getting undermined, this, that, and the other. You know what I mean? So, he's coming in here with this bad faith argument. He's just a mad, frustrated, scam Africanist Seti dude. You know what I mean? Mad that we drying that bag up, and we focusing on our lineage, from here on out. That's the new wave. And, we drying up that gravy train for a lot of these individuals. You know what I mean? And, we doing right, because the fact that, another point, this is a good point I just thought of, family. The fact that, we've delineated and we made this much headway and, everybody is attacking us from left and right and trying to box our FBA lineage in, that shows you how powerful we are and we making a statement, with this new Black Renaissance movement we got going on, the delineation movement, we making tons of headway and folks is just mad. I even heard this Seti trying to, frame it as, it's an ideology. Pan-Africanism is an ideology. FBA is a lineage, you know what I mean? And, saying that we trying to, detach people from being Pan-Africanists, this, that, and the other, we just telling our people what's the real. We ain't gonna let them be misled. We telling them you don't need to look all the way, back to Africa to pull on no greatness. We got greatness and done fly things here on American soil. You know what I mean? And damn anyone who don't like it, we gonna keep putting out this lineage-based messaging and representing for our lineage, from here on out. That's the new wave, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to bring that to the family's attention. But this got me mad, this constant attack and how people, constantly focused on what FBAs is doing, you know what I mean? Because that shows you how significant what we doing is making an impact, because people don't attack nothing that ain't making a true impact or, doing something significant, like the old saying goes, that's how you made it. When people are constantly talking about you, running their mouth, that lets you know that what you're doing is true, right, and exact. You know what I mean? So, yeah, family, we just, I had to expose this and talk about it, while I know, Pan-Africanism, that's a dead mindset that's led our people nowhere, and it, lumped us in, with all other people, and it was a way to undermine FBA lineage, if you ask me. But, even with that Hebrew Israelite thing, I understand that all of them ain't under the mindset of, lumping us all in, and trying to, because the majority of people I hear talking about the Hebrew Israelite thing, they trying to lump everybody in together, so, my fault in that regard, because if all of them don't do that, but I don't rock with nothing, that's trying to, erase our FBA lineage, over here on American soil, so, I just wanted to expose, this Captain Tazaryah nut and this, scam African, Seti. So yeah, family, we covered it and I'm getting ready to get off of here. My voice is kind of getting a little hoarse from constantly talking. And I want to thank everybody who tapped in, on the live stream with me, You know, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel if you hadn't already. You know, stay safe out there and be aware, family, because to be aware is to be alive. And peace to the family. I'm going to get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your day.